Hey guys, today we're going to talk about air fryers and specifically these two Ninja Foodi. There's the older model 2-in-1 Ninja Foodi and there's the newer SmartLid option. I'm going to walk you through what the differences are between the two and, well, if it is worth the upgrade. Before we start though, a quick introduction to what an air fryer actually is. And if you already know what an air fryer is, feel free to use the chapter selectors below to skip this part. So what is an air fryer? And technically there's no frying involved in air frying. It's more of a clever marketing term. It actually works very similar to a convection oven. Now, if you don't know what a convection oven is, well, traditionally electric ovens had a heating element below and a heating element on top for broiling. A convection oven adds a third heating element, which is often in the rear panel alongside a fan. The job of the fan is to distribute the hot air, and it results in not only faster cooking, but also more even cooking as the hot air is distributed inside the oven. This also means with a convection oven, you can have multiple layers and shelves inside the oven that would all cook at the same time without the top shelf being burnt or the lower shelf not getting enough heat. The air fryer works on the same principle. It's essentially a convection oven. But then if it's the same as a convection oven, what's the point of an air fryer and why do we call it an air fryer? Well, although it works on the same principle as a convection oven, it does yield somewhat different results, and it does crisp your food a little bit more. Similar, but not quite as much as what you get if you actually deep fry. And this is where the term air fryer came from, to denote the similarities of that crispiness that you get in deep frying, but without using oil, but rather using air or hot air. Now you're probably thinking, if it works the same way as a convection oven, what's the point of having an air fryer and why does it yield different results? Well, there's two reasons for that. The first reason, the fan on an air fryer is often much larger than that of a convection oven, and therefore there's a higher volume of hot air that is circulating. And the second reason, the air fryer is often much smaller than a convection oven. Now, if you add these two together, a larger volume of air that is circulating in a more confined space, you get different results, essentially faster but also crispier food. Now that we covered what an air fryer is, let's take a look at these two different models from Ninja. These are 2-in-1 air fryers, which means they do air frying, but also are a pressure cooker, similar to an Instant Pot, for example. The advantage of having a 2-in-1 is obviously, instead of having two separate machines that take precious counter space, but also a bigger investment, you get this one device which acts as both an Instant Pot if you want and an air fryer. Of course, they do a bunch of other things as well, and we'll get to that in just a second. Now, this first one is the older generation Ninja Foodi, and this is a 2-lid system, which means this over here is the air frying lid, and when you open that up, you see the heating element and the fan is over here. And if you want to use the pressure cooking function, there's a second lid to that, and this looks exactly the same as that Instant Pot lid if you're familiar with that. And you just place the lid over here, and now you get the pressure cooking. When you're using the air frying mode, you have to use the crisp basket over here, which, as you can see, is elevated but also perforated with a lot of holes. This is because, as we said earlier, for air frying to work, you need to circulate air. This elevation and the perforations allows the air to circulate well. And then you've got a large ceramic pot over here. This is what you're going to use for the pressure cooking and other functions as well. The newer upgraded version is a 1-lid system. It's a SmartLid. And the way it works, you get a slider over here, slide it all the way here, and this is the air frying function, and slide it all the way there. And then this is the pressure cooking function. This is more of a space-saving design because you don't need another lid to store. But the benefits don't end there. There's actually a bunch of other benefits with this 1-lid system. The first benefit is in the way it releases steam. So with a pressure cooker, you have to manually release the steam after you're done by turning this over here to the venting position. Since this is a 1-lid system, this is electronically controlled, which gives us a few nice things. As you can see over here, you have a couple of different programs. The first one is natural release. So in that program, once the timer runs out, the machine does not release the steam, but lets it release naturally over time. And as it does so, the food inside continues to cook from that residual heat, which could be useful in some type of recipes, like cooking rice, for example, which you often need to let the rice stay in there with the steam to continue cooking. The other option is quick release. With the quick release, of course, as soon as the timer is done, it simply lets a few beeps to warn you it's about to release hot steam, and then releases all the steam. And then the third program is also an interesting one. It's called delayed release. As the name suggests, it delays the release by a certain amount of time that you define. Again, cooking rice, for example, you would cook the rice for a couple of minutes, depending on what grain of rice you use, and then you often need to let it rest for 10 minutes with the vapor, so it continues to cook, and then after 10 minutes, you can release the remaining pressure. In that case, what you do is set delayed release, and you set 10-minute timer. So after cooking is done, it's going to wait 10 minutes, and then after 10 minutes, it's going to release all the remaining pressure. That's the first benefit. The second and more important benefit is a new cooking mode that they have developed, which is combination cooking. The idea behind combination cooking, which includes steam air frying, steam baking, and steam bread, is that it uses both steam and the air fryer at the same time. The logic behind that is that when you're air frying, it is dry heat, which sometimes can cause the food to dry out. The idea behind combination cooking or steam air frying is that you use both steam and air frying at the same time. The steam will lock in the moisture in the food, while the air frying function makes sure that your food gets nice, brown, and crispy. The way this function works, you put in some liquid, whether it's broth or even just water, at the bottom of the pot. The lower heating element, which is the one that's used in the pressure cooking function, heats up to start creating steam, and then at the same time as the steam is created from below, the upper element over here, which is the air fryer, is going to be blowing hot air to crisp your food. Later on, I will try a whole chicken cooked in both, one in just the air fryer mode and here in the steam air fry mode, just to see, is it a marketing gimmick or does it actually yield better and moister chicken? Now, this specific model has a third advantage, which is a built-in thermometer, which is over here. Now, they do have another model, the same smart one-lid system without the thermometer, but this one has a built-in thermometer, which is also a great advantage. Normally, when you cook food, your recipes, your guides give you a temperature and a time. But this is often a hit and miss because there's a lot of variables from the quantity of food that you're cooking to the thickness of whatever you are cooking. So it's really not a standard preset guide in terms of temperature and cook time. The actual standard is internal temperature, which should be your guiding star, which should be how you cook food to get to that correct internal temperature. This not only ensures that your food is not overcooked, but also that it is safe for consumption. Now, you can achieve that with traditional cooking methods or even with this one, but it takes a lot of trial and error. You have to keep checking with a food thermometer the internal temperature, and if you overshoot that, your food's probably going to be dry. And this is where this thing comes in handy. Instead of telling the machine to cook at a certain temperature for a certain period of time, all you have to do is insert this probe in the food. The machine is going to detect that the thermometer is inserted. You're going to tell the machine what you are cooking, and it's going to continue cooking until it reaches the correct internal temperature. Let me tell you what I mean. You open the machine and you remove this plug over here and you insert the temperature probe. As soon as you do that, if you notice over here, the machine detected that the thermometer is inserted and you have a couple of presets. So if you click on preset, you have chicken. You also have beef, and with beef, you can choose how well you want it cooked. So you can go between rare, medium, medium well, etc. You also have pork, and if you doneness levels, you have lamb and you have fish. You can, of course, also go the manual route and tell the machine whatever internal temperature you want to cook at. And once you do that, it's going to continue cooking until it reaches that exact right internal temperature, and then it's going to stop. When I cook the chicken later on, I'm going to use the internal thermometer and we're going to check if it actually works. Now, I mentioned earlier these are air fryers but also pressure cookers, but there's a couple of other functions as well. Let's start off with the older one. On the air frying mode, there's air frying or air crisp as Ninja calls it. There's grill, there's bake or roast, and there's dehydrate, which is nice. You can make sun-dried tomatoes or dehydrated kiwi or strawberries or bananas, but also you can make beef jerky. On the pressure cooking side, you've got pressure cooking, you get steam, so you can use this as a steamer. You got a slow cooker, which is like a crock pot, which you can set at high or low. And also you have a yogurt function if you want to make homemade yogurt, which is very easy to make in this. All you have to do is put in some milk. It's gonna bring the milk up to a boil. Once it reaches that temperature, it's gonna signal that it's there. You then need to add your live culture, and then it will ferment over a couple of hours, often 6 or 8 hours, and you have homemade yogurt. And the last function over here is sear or saute, which acts similar to a frying pan. The advantage of that is if you want to further brown something before you pressure cook it, for example, you don't need to use a pan and then use this. You can do it all in one pot. You can brown your onions or whatever protein you're doing in this and then pressure cook. On the newer one, if we go to the air frying function, more or less the same modes over there. You get air fry, you get grill, you get bake, you get dehydrate again. You have a new mode over here as the proof mode, so you can actually proof your dough in this machine at low temperatures. So it starts at 25 degrees Celsius and goes all the way up to 35 degrees Celsius, which is low enough to proof the dough without actually cooking it. You would then again have sear, saute, steam, slow cook, and yogurt. Some versions of these, the North American version in particular, has a sous vide function. The European version, which is one I have here, for some reason does not have sous vide. I really don't know why, but if you're in the US, you probably will have sous vide over here. And then if we go to the new combination steam cooking function, you have steaming meals, you have steam air fry, you have steam bake, and you have steam bread. Now let's try to cook a whole chicken in both of these to see if that new combination method actually has any benefit or if it's all marketing gimmicks. What I'm gonna do, I have 2 whole chickens over here, exactly the same weight. This is 1.3 kilograms to try to minimize any variables. I'm gonna brush them with some oil, salt, and pepper and place them in both and start cooking and see what we get. So I have both birds inside. I've rubbed some oil on both of them. I'm gonna add some salt, some pepper, this one, we can go ahead and close it already. And for this one, we need to insert the probe. Now, the correct way to do this is to insert the probe in the chicken breast, perpendicularly like that. You have to insert it all the way into the thickest point of the chicken, but make sure you do not hit any bone or the cavity inside, because that's going to give you some false readings. So we have our chicken over here. Let's try to find the thickest part of the breast and insert this all the way in. There you go. And then once we're done, we have to plug the thermometer over here. We also have to put in some liquid. Now the recipe does actually call for a couple of things to be added. It's like lemon zest, some lemon juice, some rosemary, some peppercorns, even some honey, which is gonna flavor the steam and give it a better taste afterwards. I'm not going to use any of that for now. I want to try to minimize any variables with this, so I don't want to influence the taste much. I'm just going to use water. So I have a cup of water over here, which I am going to pour in. And we close it down. Now I'm going to put this on air crisp at 200 degrees Celsius. It should take somewhere between 30 to 45 minutes out of experience. I'm going to start it off at 30 minutes and see where it is at after 30 minutes. And for this one, of course, I'm just going to go to the steam air fry. I'm going to go to preset and select chicken. Now, what I usually do, this selects 75 degrees Celsius by default. I'd like to go ahead and put it on 70 degrees just to allow for that margin. I will double check with a food thermometer afterwards if it's at temperature, but this tends to slightly overshoot, so I'd like it at 70, which often gives me around 75 degrees or so. Let's start this one. It's going to start by preheating, so it's going to take a couple of minutes to preheat. And then once it's done preheating, you have that steam that is generated and the air fryer is going to start blasting hot air from the top. I'm going to start this at the same time and let's see how long it's going to take. I'm going to keep this camera rolling just so you can see how long the preheating time is going to be. This started off at 30 minutes, so let's see how long preheating is going to take on this one. So this took about 8 minutes to come up to pressure and it's going to start cooking. You see over here the probe temperature is 7 degrees and we needed to get to 70 degrees. So as you can see, this one is almost done. This one is done and this one is almost at the temperature. It's probably going to take another minute or two, but let's check the internal temperature of this one over here. This looks nice and crispy. Let's check the internal temperature of this one. We are at 80 degrees Celsius, which is around just right. The FDA recommends 165 degrees Fahrenheit, which is somewhere around 75 degrees Celsius, so this is just right. 30 minutes is all it took, although the Ninja recipe book says it should take somewhere between 45 and 55 minutes, and this one is done. But out of experience, I know a chicken of the size should take about 30 minutes only. Let's check the temperature on this one over here. This also, as you can see, looks quite nice and crispy. So as you can see, a couple of degrees off. This is 75 degrees, exactly as I intended it to be. So I would say both of them are cooked quite well. Let's take them out of the air fryers and do a taste test to see if this is any juicier than this one. So we have both over here. This one is the new Ninja SmartLid with the combination cooking, and this one is the older 2-lid system. So this was air fried purely, and this had the steam air fry. And off the bat, we see this one browned a little bit more over here, but they're both quite crispy. Let's give them a taste and see which one tastes better. I'm going to start off with arguably the driest part of the chicken, which is the breast. Let's start with this one. This is not bad at all. I would say slightly, even barely on the dry side, but definitely not dry. As you can see, there's a lot of moisture and then it's a bit springy over here. Let's try the other one. Definitely a little bit juicier. Also, you can see over here, there's a bit more springiness than with this one. This is juicier for sure, but not by a lot. This one is not bad at all. So I was less than impressed with the whole chicken. The one cooked in combination mode was only ever so slightly juicier than the one cooked purely in an air fryer. So I decided to repeat the test, this time with a chicken breast. As you know, this is normally dry. So I'm gonna cook this here with the thermometer in, as you see, and I'm gonna add a cup of water and cook this with the steam air fry mode and this one on air fry alone, and let's see the results afterwards. The chicken is only rubbed with oil, salt and pepper. So now this one is done. It reached 70 degrees Celsius. Let me double check with the thermometer. There you go. That's a 75, exactly as we need it to be at the thickest part. And let's see this one. And that's also around 76 degrees. Perfect. All in all, this took 25 minutes and they took exactly the same time. However, this had about 6.5 minutes of warm-up time until the steam built up enough. So total cook time about 25 minutes for both. Let's take these out and do our taste test. So let's try these out. This over here is the one cooked in the combination steam and air fry, and this is the traditional air fry. Off the bat, I don't see much of a difference, but let's dig in and see. Let me start with the more crispy part. Yeah, this is going to be dry on this side, and that's quite dry over here. on both, probably. So both are dry. Let's try the other side, which was much thicker. So ideally you want these to be of the same thickness to cook evenly throughout. So this is quite stringy and dry, as you can see. Let's see this one from this side. There seems to be a little bit more moisture there. Juicier for sure, but not by much. Next up, I decided to try with a piece of steak. Now, out of all the methods of cooking steak, air frying is definitely not one that I would use, but I was curious to see how it would turn out, so I got a piece of steak, I placed the probe inside, and I selected beef in medium rare. The machine took about 10 minutes for it to get to that temperature or that doneness level. And again, if you really want to enjoy a piece of steak, I would definitely not recommend air frying it. You can never get that nice crispy crust that you would get if you were searing it on a skillet. But if for whatever reason you want to air fry your steak, well, you can, and it wasn't bad for an air fried steak. It was a bit overdone in different parts, and that's because the steak was not of uniform thickness. But if you value simplicity in hands-off cooking more than that perfectly tasting piece of steak, then you definitely can just slap a piece in the air fryer, put the probe in, select your doneness level, and just set it and forget it. I also tried cooking a duck breast. I placed it on the grill and I also selected medium rare, and I was a bit impressed with the results. Now, again, this is not the most ideal way to cook, especially with duck breasts, and that's partly because when you put in the probe and select your doneness level, the machine is blasting full power, full heat all the time, so you have little control over that. And with something like duck breasts, if you're cooking it on a skillet, for example, you have more control over heat and you're better able to render all that fat in the skin versus in an air fryer. Now, it definitely did crisp the skin and that was great. I would have loved a bit more rendering, so there's less of that fat still over there. But the benefit of this machine is not to cook food in the best possible way. It is to cook it in the easiest and simplest way, and on that, it delivers really well. Lastly, French fries, perhaps the most common thing people use an air fryer for, and the results were not bad at all. Now, these were hand-cut fries, not frozen, because often frozen fries are actually deep fried. So if you're looking for the health benefit of air frying, you're not really getting any benefit if you were air frying something that was deep fried before. And a quick note here, the results of French fries highly depend on the type of potatoes that you use. I did not have the best type, but these were not bad at all. But again, your results might vary depending on what type of potatoes. So here are my thoughts on these two. Let me start off with whether an air fryer is something that is useful, essential or not. And for me in particular, it really is. I actually have two air fryers that I use. There's one over here which is also a Ninja, and I'll probably do a review on that one later on. And I have this one which I use almost regularly. The advantage is, first of all, I try to avoid deep frying. I actually don't remember the last time I deep fried anything at home. It's probably at least 6 or 7 years ago. So I got similar results with an air fryer without the health disadvantages of deep frying. It's also much faster than using my convection oven, and this is why I rely on this air fryer, but also the other one for almost all of my cooking needs. So for me, an air fryer is definitely very useful, and now more particularly the Ninja Foodi. Also, I absolutely love it. I used this for a couple of years until this one was out, and then I upgraded to this. So I absolutely love and also use a lot the pressure cooking function, and I love that I get both pressure cooking and air frying in one machine, less counter space, less maintenance, less machines to have. Now, do I think this is worth the upgrade? And in my opinion, it is. I really like everything this machine introduces, be it the automatic pressure release function, which means in theory I don't have to be in the kitchen if whatever I'm cooking is done. It can release the pressure by itself, and then it will go into keep warm mode, which keeps the food warm. But also it means I can delay release if I want to. I absolutely love that. The combination cooking mode, I think, is great. You can, in theory, achieve something similar with this. You can, in theory, start cooking that whole chicken by pressure cooking it for a while, and then after the pressure cooking is done, you can air fry it. It might yield similar results, but not quite as, let me say, convenient as having it here with the steam and the air frying working at the same time. And lastly, the built-in thermometer. I also absolutely love that. It reduces significantly the errors you might have in overcooking or even undercooking food. It's not always accurate, and that's not the fault of the machine, but rather the food that you're cooking. For this to be perfect, let me say, the food that you're cooking has to be of uniform thickness all throughout, which is rarely the case. For most cases, I love the fact that I can just set the internal temperature and not worry about the time. The machine is going to do its thing until it gets to around that internal temperature, and then it's going to stop cooking. That's all for me. Thanks for watching. I will put links in the description to the product pages of both products. These are affiliate links, so if you do decide to purchase any of them, I would appreciate if you would go through the affiliate links. I may earn some commissions on qualifying purchases at no extra cost to you. This would greatly help supporting the channel. Thanks again for watching. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to drop them in the comments section. And as always, if you liked the video, please hit the like button and consider subscribing to my channel, as this encourages me to continue producing content. Until next time, cheers.